how will this thing end. So and basis of this, we will be able to understand the impact on financial markets. So so the first scenario is strict measures are taken which will contain the coronavirus. So there is one analogy in our history, which is SARS. So SARS was of a similar nature, and it started in southern China in 2002, and it was brought under control by the measures which we are seeing around us, which is through isolation, quarantine, and contact tracing. So in this, around 8,500 people were impacted, and there is currently no vaccine for this, but because they were able to contain this through social distancing, the number of new infections were plateaued out or flattened out, uh, and the number of deaths eventually also reduced. So, but in the early days, this was pretty scary as how it is for coronavirus, and the death rate was also very high. Uh, but the SARS was a stark differentiation because we were able to easily identify in those days of the people who are impacted by SARS. But for coronavirus, it is in some of the research report, like people with no symptoms are also are impacted by coronavirus. So it will be slightly trickier, but this measure can still be uh, applicable to coronavirus. So if we believe this is what will happen, then then these are the number of cases which are increased, like cumulative count of that along the number of days. So for example, US took 24 days to reach 100,000 count, and similarly for other countries. So what we have to do is we have to make this exponential rising curve a flat curve. So what South Korea did, so they actually made it quite flat, and similar thing was done in SARS. So this is the chart from Wikipedia. So as you can see, the orange line indicates the cumulative cases which we have, which is the same line which we see in this chart. And the number of cases were initially rising right from April to May, but because of social distancing and other measures, the number of incremental case started reducing, and which is what made in this S or a logistic curve, which we see on my screen. And the death rate actually followed this orange curve, and it also flattened out. So, if we believe SARS is a good analogy of what will happen with coronavirus, then these are the timelines which will work out with. And let's see how financial markets played out during SARS period. So, this is the same daily percentage change of the four instruments which we are working with, which is crude, S&P 500, gold, and 20 years US Treasury bonds. So since this was pretty much a disease epidemic which was in China, so we see less impact on financial markets. But nevertheless, this red line indicates when this there was a possible health emergency which was announced, and around that there are some this sharp movements up and down or increase in volatility which we can see. So again, this chart makes it very clear. So the crude actually followed quite a lot during this period, but S&P 500, which is this orange line, was relatively less impacted of what we see in this coronavirus times, and same as this US Treasury. So again, the drawdowns were bad in the sense for S&P it was around 15% during that period, and crude was 30%, but gold was again in mid-teens, and US Treasury was also down around 5%. But since this was managed very well by containing, so there was not significant fall as we see right now. And also we just do the same correlation analysis, and in this everything is negatively correlated with S&P 500, Again, this won't be the right data points to work with because this epidemic happened in China. So better metrics would be to compare it with the Shanghai index. But then nevertheless, we are seeing a very high negative correlation between S&P and the treasury bonds, gold, and crude oil in this period in time. And let's see how the things pan out after the crisis is over. So the blue shaded region is when WHO says everything is fine, and that is when the blue period starts with. So as you can see, uh, like there was this sharp fall during this emergency declaration, but after that the index actually recovered quite sharply, and the number of days since this thing happened was also quite short, as you can see, and the recovery was also very fast in this blue period. Okay. So that is there, and so idea is so I've just taken four instruments for simplicity. If you want to do any kind of correlation analysis or on any other instrument, for example VIX, or for your own local index, then feel free to use the code which I'll be sharing with this presentation, and replace the instrument with your own favorite instrument which you want to analyze with. And hopefully if you find something interesting, then do share it with me. And so SARS was similar to what coronavirus is, like social distancing and no contact and other stuff. So and this actually was very well handled, so it didn't spread very much away from China. It was there in some other countries, but the number of cases was not quite significant. And this is the returns which you so this is the same representation, this is the same graph, but in a bar graph format. So this is 1 year, 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year returns from say 26th March, which is the first date when WHO declared emergency on SARS. So for S&P 500, the returns are very robust, like 5%, 10%, 15, and 25% for 1, 3, 6, and 1 year period. And similarly, you can see for crude CLF, CL equal to F is crude futures, GC equal to F is gold futures, and this is TLT. So this is a similar kind of analysis. And the most interesting question is, which everyone was asking, is which sectors will be impacted the most, and how the performance of this sector will be after the crisis is over. So as you can see in this graph, the sectors which are most impacted are at the top, and sectors which has shown a positive returns or least impacted are shown at the bottom. This is of MSCI China sector performance. And as you can see, the most impacted were consumer durables, hotel, restaurants, and leisure, and airlines. So these are some of the sectors which are most impacted, and some of them which are least impacted are healthcare, food, beverage, and tobacco. People like to smoke even during crisis, and other sectors. So this dark blue indicates the performance of the sector during the crisis, and the light blue indicates the performance of the sector after the crisis, after this epidemic is over. So as you can see, this food beverage not only had a positive return during the crisis, but after the epidemic also, it has shown the most positive performance after the crisis. So this gives us some cues, like the products which are in FMCG or of daily essentials are something which we can look for. And similarly, healthcare and pharma companies are showing similar trend. And something like retailing was say negative during the epidemic and also after the epidemic. So for some sector, we are able to see a prominent trend from this analysis. So if we go by SARS, and if we expect something similar to turn out in COVID, then you know which sectors will be showing the healthy performance during the recovery phase.